Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Tony Ponturo. It is Tony Ponturo and Ray Warren's show today. We have news, so we'll share that at the top to let everyone in on the news, which is that Tony, who had the idea for this show, and then we continue doing it, has filled his calendar with a lot of other responsibilities, and he's going to be becoming what we hope down the road is maybe a guest, but he will be leaving the Wisdom Circle as the producer along with me, and I'm going to let Tony talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about who will be joining us. But first, let's have Tony have a chance to talk about his decision and his experience, and then we'll talk about some fun topics that might help all of us, get through the day and the wisdom that is out there and between Tony and I. Tony.
Right. Well, thank you. It's funny. A little over 2 years ago now, I twisted your arm to do this podcast. You were a little hesitant at first. And we've had 2 great years and over 50 episodes, and it's been a lot of fun. And as you pointed out, you in anything in business, is this business? Is this fun? Is it giving back? It's probably all the above. Is you want to give it the right time and the right focus. And fortunately, on the other side of this argument is that sort of my broader consulting roles, being on the board of Voight as we try to reintroduce the brand in the United States, which has been very viable in Mexico and is the official soccer ball of Liga MX, which is a pretty popular, obviously, league in Mexico and in many parts of the U.S. And then as executive chairman of A-Changin, and was actually just in Sports Business Journal yesterday, I believe. And we don't really put a date and time stamp on our podcast, but sometimes it's tough to avoid it. Is we were just awarded the whole business sponsorship, sales, sort of advisors to the relatively new Major League Volleyball, which is a professional women's league. A good friend of ours, Doug Smoyer, who's one of our co-heads, along with Patrick Luckett, worked with the currently new, probably 2 or 3 months old commissioner, Jamie Weston, and she sort of had confidence in us and the great job that Doug did in talking to the owners, et cetera. So, make a long story short, we were just awarded that business, and so it's a big, we'll put a little pat on our back for a smaller agency, and so it's going to take a lot of effort as well as other things that we're doing with the agency. So it felt like it was time, and as Ray said before we came on, I assume you like all this, and it's like, I just bought a T-shirt, and I should have worn it. I saw it on Instagram, and I had to have it. And I should have brought it. I did not. It's downstairs from where I'm taping, and it says "Not done yet." And so that's sort of how I feel in business. You can't hang up the spurs. And I think everyone out there that's older, it'd be tough for those that are younger to understand that you get so involved in business. And it becomes so much of who you are and the energy and the brain capacity and the, bouncing things up and down. It's very difficult to turn off. And I've been fortunate not to totally turn it off. And now it's sort of, the volume's going up a little bit more. So that's sort of the background. So I'll let Ray, we're going to bring on a new co-host. I think it's good because, things in business, it's always good to have new voices, a new change, conversations. Hopefully, well, not hopefully, they will get better because it's a different perspective along with Ray. So anyway, it's been great. but Ray's been gracious to not beat me up too much and say, you know, go do your thing. We're always going to be great friends. We love each other. If you last over 40 years, Ray always knows the exact. And I know it was
It was
like
actually somewhere June of 1978. So, I mean, I went to BBDO in June. So it is 46 years.
And, it's funny. The reason I always has to hesitate is for some reason in my mind, I feel you were there the first day I was at BBDO, but that was May of '76. So I didn't realize it 2 years.
Like a month.
I'd start screwing things up on Campbell Soup and Scott Paper Towel and GE and the things that you work on as a young assistant. You know, it's funny. I just rewatched with my wife Wendy the 7 seasons of Mad Men, and I have to laugh. I think about season 4 or 5. The media guy who's been sort of put, in the corner. Now TV's starting to come on, and now computers are starting to come on, and so they've blown out a whole coffee room to have these big computers. And Ray, you'll remember, it was a different name. I think it was like Uta Hagen or something like that, or that may be. She was our computer person. Yeah, thank you. So I just remember when we were both young media buyers. At first you would put things down on a pad, a green pad, and it's like, okay, happy days. Here's the, here's the ratings against women 21 to 34, and then 40, 49 plus, whatever. And then the computers came on to do all that for you. And so it was fun to relive how all of a sudden the media buyer in the media department at an agency became sort of the big cheese because it became the revenue generator. So all of a sudden, if Coca-Cola was, when I was at McCann Erickson, was spending $200 million on national TV, McCann Erickson was getting 17.65% of that. So that was big bucks. So anyway, we've seen a lot, and so it's the bottom line. It's fun to have variety, and I'm proud of what we've done, and it's even going to be bigger and better as you take it forward with our next co-host.
It'll be different. I mean, things evolve, right? There's nothing more constant than change. Change is good. Two things have been sparked by your opening comments. One is the funniest line in that episode is when the account executive is giving a potential new client a tour of the agency, and it's beautiful offices and windows and views, and that coffee room, he opens the door. All you hear is clicking and clacking of computers and fingertips, and he says, "That's where we make all the money." And then he shut the door. I thought it was, our life in media, right? The second thing, and I know we have other things we want to talk about, but you hit on something, because as I said to you today, I've got to get a haircut, massage at 2:00, got to go shopping, going to think about another podcast I have in mind. I'm on 2 boards that have nothing to do with the media business. And then I'm thinking about Not Done Yet, and how, people say, man, getting old is hard. Well, yeah, it beats the alternative. And yet there are other ways to stay engaged. I struggled in the first couple of years because I was kind of lost after 40 years of whatever. Yeah. And the last 6 at Telemundo, doing 2 World Cups, which we'll get to, was quite amazing. So I kind of it was a rocky landing. But I've gotten, really not done yet by engaging in other things. And I do keep a very close eye on the media business. I think the Wisdom Circle helps with that. I can read about it. I mean, the more things change, the more they stay the same to some degree. So it's an interesting thing that some people choose. And we have a lot of viewers I know who are 45 to 55. I've spoken to a lot of them. And then we have some. Sydney Bruner comes to mind. Congratulations, Sydney. She just graduated from Kellogg with an MBA, who said, one of the things we've learned, we talked about that, was, we want to help everybody. Like, you guys all wanted to step on each other to climb to the top of the elevator, and we all just want to survive and get through the day. And we're not great at talking to people or having meetings. We work hybrid, remote, or in person. Um, and so, it's all different and it's all good and different ways of staying engaged and I won't even say climbing the ladder. It's just, you do need some purpose when you roll out of bed in the morning. What am I going to do today? And it's not just a massage and a haircut and go and Stop and Shop. It's other things that are
Right.
things that I think about. So yeah, I think that's what's happened here a little bit is your path evolved, mine's evolved. And hey, it's all good. I think it's
And it
some
keeps
really exciting.
evolving. No, I mean it's so much. There's so much. I had to laugh. There's a gentleman named Rob Grice who's a professor at Wharton. And I guess I'm giving him a little pop up front, but he's writing a book on sports marketing, and he's talking to different people for different chapters. And so I was humbled that he asked to speak to me on the chapter of sponsorship. And um, what I said to him in this conversation, which you never know what will end up in print, was because he was talking about some campaigns, and I said, what the industry needs to be careful of is you'll talk about the campaign, right? But make sure it's actually selling the product. I don't want to cite names, but over the 40 years of business, there's been a lot of uh, really good campaigns, but they really ultimately weren't talking correctly to the consumer base or the big part of the consumer base. So we sometimes get caught up. I watch some of the reports about the can awards for advertising, and everyone, that's great for their book. But if you asked any of those advertising people, and now this is my little cynical side, well, how did you move the business for that client you just won the award for? I bet you they don't know the answer. So one of
Totally.
the things that I continually will talk about in my role at Echelon is let's make sure, and you were always on the sales side. Well, you ran obviously Raycom, which was a pretty well
Yeah,
known
Karen
company,
OMD. So I
and
have
Karen
sat on that other
OMD.
side of the table.
But I said I can't tell you how many proposals people came in with a proposal, and if I said what is I'll make it easy. What is our national market share? They go, I don't know. Okay, what is Miller Coors market share? I don't know. Okay, you're a local team. Let's speed up on Cincinnati. And what's our market share in Ohio or Cincinnati? I don't know. So the other thing, and I don't know why I'm off on this tangent, which is know know who you're dealing with. Do a little homework, because people come in with sales pitches, and be curious of your feedback on this, but they really don't know much about the customer they're selling to, other than don't we have great spots and dots, and here's our unit costs, and let's negotiate. Now, hopefully, you can prove me wrong that you did better research than I'm
Um,
suggesting.
I will tell you that I did. That's why I was able to succeed. And some people succeed in spite of that. But I'll tell you, the two things is the one thing that I don't promote. I never was a big go to the Hall of Fame guy. You know, time in the agency business, time in the sales business, time in the Spanish language business. I mean, I've been around the circle, right?
Yeah,
So I've seen it from both sides, and I will tell you that I was running OMD buying billions of dollars. Even had more spots in the Super Bowl than you bought, but it was for different clients. You were the biggest single buyer.
right.
And somebody came in to pitch OMD. I think it was the Weather Channel. And they had a pitch for every client we had, from State Farm to Nissan to Gatorade to McDonald's. And it was all about their stuff. Oh, we could do a weather by McDonald's into this. I'm like, do you have any idea what we're trying to accomplish?
Right.
Do you know what McDonald's market share is in Philadelphia? Um, just, just totally not looking at it. And so, you know, I think I don't know that it's gotten better when everybody's just selling this gross number of impressions and they have engagement and they have time spent and they have all this. But to your point about knowing, there are times I watch ads and I'll say to my wife, Peggy, we'll give our wives a plug. I have no idea what they're advertising. It's a funny spot. And the conversation becomes about the spot, not the sponsor.
Yeah,
Like these
no,
guys are so busy trying to win an award at Cannes so they can get on the plane and drink rosé that,
well, I
yeah,
always similar reaction is, but my mind goes to, okay, what was the conversation in the conference room that said this is going to be a good idea, and this was,
yes,
and I think what provoked
1,000%.
this topic was in this conversation with the professor slash author was he said, well, do you think you would have done things differently at Anheuser-Busch today versus because of the technology boom, more choices, consumer differences? And I said, of course we would have done things differently because if you're doing it right, you follow. Sometimes you lead the consumer. Many times you follow the consumer. You understand what they're doing, what they're watching, where they're spending time on. It's all the same. You've heard me ad nauseum say all the principles are the same over 40 years. It's just different entities, different language, different, but the objectives are the same. How do you reach the consumer in the environment that they're they're approachable, and do you connect the dot with them? And that should, oversimplify and move the product. So there could be
So,
100 more choices, but the
right.
principle's still the same.
Well, I have one principle. Once I got into sports, which was at Raycom in 1988, and I've been in sports pretty much ever since then. And I would carry this little sheet of paper with me to every bulletin board I had in an office, and I would pin it up. And it says, if you serve the fan will serve you.
Yep.
And you could put in the word consumer. You could put in the word anything. But it's a servant leadership and a servant position, not let me tell you what you want to buy. You need this because. No,
Right.
not really. So once again, we aggressively agree, as always.
Well,
Let me
I
take
saw something recently of Steve Jobs, who, he's almost like a master. Well, he is like a master's class when you see some of the talks and stuff he gave. He said, we observed the consumer and where they were headed and what they needed before we would even go to the engineers to make something. It's like, okay, now that we have some consumer data, now let's go to the engineers and say, can we make this? They
right.
weren't making this and then trying to force it in. I mean, you're the music lover. It's like, okay, I see people that, they got their CDs, they have their cassettes, whatever. And he probably said to people, what if you had 100 songs on one little, iPod or whatever they were called back then?
Yeah.
It's like, that would be great. Okay, let's go make one.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, I did wear a T-shirt today. I don't know if you can see it.
You're going to have to stand up, I think. Oh, there you go.
It's a T-shirt you gave me. You gave me at my last birthday that ended in a 0. And the next one is 80. So I do have a Tony Ponturo gift on below my jersey here. So yeah, I think people just lose sight of things. They want to win awards. They want to move. They want to really direct movies and everything. But we could kill that. Let me do one little bridge, and then we'll talk about the World Cup. Yeah. So we do want to announce today that our producer and colleague and friend, I hired Ramon in 2008 to run research at NBC Sports, the regional sports networks, where we just blew it out of the water. And so much of that was the research Ramon and his team did, making me look smart, and making our sales team look smart. He does many other things. He's in a band, and he coaches the men's basketball team at the Ross School. He recruits for the Ross. He's got an amazing resume. He's been in the tech business, the gaming business, and we've been friends since 2008. So 30 years less than you and I, Tony, but still a pretty good run. And Ramon's going to he's producing right now. He's behind this whole platform in our talk. And Ramon's going to continue that role, but he's going to figure out how to do both because he can figure anything out. And he's going to join me, which we think is nice in terms of evolution as it relates to new voices, new points of view, slightly different. Tony, you and I don't know what we don't agree on, but we agree on a lot. And that, I think, helps our guests. And that's been great. Now, I don't know, Ramon might teach me stuff too, and maybe I'll teach him stuff. So excited about that. We're going to take a break after this episode, come back sometime after the 4th of July, and probably before Labor Day. But that was the announcement I wanted to make about how excited I am. I think, Tony, you think fondly of Ramon as well, to have Ramon kind of step in front of the camera, as it were.
Absolutely. And Ramon, I know you're listening. My only piece of advice, other than to be yourself, is Ray likes to leave out last names. So for those who don't know who Ramon is, it's Ramon Ramos.
I did it again.
He doesn't forget Steely Dan because that's painted on his chest. But kidding Ray, but for all our guests say, well, who's Ramon? Who's Ramon?
That's right. Ramon Ramos.
That's my only piece of advice. Have fun with it. It's fun to do, and congratulations, because anyone involved in anything that moves conversation to a screen to technology, it doesn't happen without that person. And when we were talking about the podcast two plus years ago, it was like, well, okay, we can talk, but who's going to get it, in some sort of technical professional form? And Ray Warren said he had the right guy.
Yeah.
Ramon Ramirez, who normally goes by Ray, but we formalized his name, which is actually his name, because we didn't want to have two Rays. And so what was the old Bob Newhart when they had, the three brothers were named Daryl, and Daryl, so it's like, anyway.
Well, let me jump. Sorry.
Good luck to you
done
guys.
This before.
I look forward to watching and listening.
Yes. So it is Ramon Ramos. So that everybody gets I think you said Ramirez, but it's Ramos.
No, I know it's Ramos. If I said it, I apologize.
I know you do. I got to. He's got to know that I know his last name after
That's
20
the other
years.
thing you like. No, I'm just kidding.
I do. I love correcting you. Because no one ever could. You were Tony Ponturo, and are. But it was just like, yeah, but I shared a cubicle in 1978. It's Tony. Sorry. But anyway, so that's going to be fun. Tony, as a lot of people say, the door's always open, and we'll figure out a time for you to come back and join as a guest and share what's going on and all that stuff. And we're looking forward to that. And we're looking forward to life going on and people evolving and staying friends and colleagues and honest conversation. I think one of the things you and I have always talked about with our guests is honesty, integrity, right? Hard work, show up, etc. So World Cup, I guess we'll go to kind of stories of the day. We had a couple of things we wanted to cover. We have 10, 15 minutes left. So you wanted to ask me a question about the World Cup.
I think it's two, well, probably more because you went to both men and women when you were president of Telemundo Sports. I think I got the title right, but correct me if I left out something.
Perfect.
Yeah, right. And so, anyway, so you observed the World Cup, you behind the scenes, et cetera. Now you're observing from your Barca lounger. What are you seeing? Do you like it better? Obviously, it's a different format. Obviously, even our Speaker of the House is now bashing the Americans because we don't appreciate America like all of our international friends are. But anyway, what's your observation?
You really brought it home at the end with our speaker, and we've always said, we don't talk politics here.
Right.
Not a lot of wisdom comes out of talking politics on either side because there's not a lot of wise people. So I will say to you that I was, they got run over by the New York Knicks in the championship NBA run in terms of pre-promotion. I live in New York, and even when I'm in Florida, I live in New York. So I was skeptical that, what are these guys? All the things I'm hearing in the background. I'm hearing everything. My team from Telemundo and the folks who left and the folks who are still there are still bringing me in on what should I do? What do you think? So that's another engagement thing. It's free, but I thought it was going to be a total disaster. And I am I'm tipping my hat. Cape Verde, beats or ties Spain. Some of the additional teams they brought in have shown up. Um, the crowds have shown up, right? They said, I've heard two numbers: 3.6 million people have come from around the world to the U.S., and I heard 6.5 million people have come from around the world. The stadiums are full. So one of the conversations I was thinking of having with you, but I don't know where it goes, although you're in the experiential business now. Everybody talked about ticket prices and $10,000 for a good seat and $1,000 for a bad seat. Somebody's paying it. Somebody paid a fly here. They got in. They're in a hotel, and they're spending gazillions of dollars. They said $17 billion it will be spent on this World Cup, the equivalent of 20 Super Bowls. Now, there are 96 games, so it's not 96 Super Bowls. We used to say it's a Super Bowl every day. And yes, it was 3 World Cups. It was 18 in Moscow, 19 in Paris women's, and 20 in Doha, Qatar. And they were Qatar was small because all the venues were in one city. Moscow was bigger than this in terms of miles we had to cover. But I think they're doing a good job. Now, the only thing about politics, this is their only chance every 4 years to really celebrate life. Soccer is life around the world because things are not great when they go home. So for him to be making some analogy about what other countries are doing when they get here versus us is apples and oranges. That's why the World Cup is so big. It's every 4 years to be themselves, to have a party, to embrace a joyous event until they lose, whoever they are, or go on. So, it is as rocking an event as ever. And I think Gianni Infantino, who controversial in many ways, but his talk is, I want to grow the game. I think he's growing the game in spite of any other kind of crazy stuff that's going on. He is growing the game. He's got 96 teams in the tournament instead of 64. He's got 48 games instead of 32. Everything looks good to me. And I'm happy for
Yeah, and I think spinning off of that a little bit, I would say that the lesson, if I was talking back to our politicians, is why the Scots in Boston, was such a story, which is just one of them, is because there was tolerance by the police department and the citizens of Boston to let a Tartan army band go down the streets, let thousands of Scots party on the street, go into the bars. If that was a normal day of Americans, I would hazard to think that, okay, is this disturbance of the peace? Is this unruly? What's going on here? So tolerance is a big thing, and that should be the lesson learned, that people from all nationalities and all backgrounds, are all 99% of the people are good people. If you want to argue it's 95, we can argue that as well. But we allow the people to be their people, bring their customs, bring their languages, whatever, to our country, and we tolerated it. That's the lesson, if I make it on my political box, that we should be taken away.
Yeah, well, nothing that happened in the Supreme Court yesterday is going to help that along. And by the way, and I think it was this, when I was in Moscow, I read the morning U.S. newspaper in English, and it talked about how we had drank all the beer. Moscow was dry. They were going out overnight, bringing beer in from other cities. They drank Boston dry. But the people who did it are the kind of people that people in Washington, let's just go there, Stephen Miller and Donald J. Trump, those are the people they want here. They want UK people. They don't want Hispanics. They don't want Asians. They don't want anybody but people who make them remember who they are and who their ancestors were. So they let the Scots do it. I don't know if they would let the Haitian team do it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now it'll stop.
Yeah, no, it's lessons learned every day. But no, I think it's been great. I, like you, thought it had zero, not awareness, because people knew it was coming, but And then the other thing people need to understand, I'll say it strongly that the media, not fake news, but they don't always know all the facts sometimes around sports. They think they do, but they don't. And where I'm going with this is probably 3/4 of these stadiums are filled with federation sponsor tickets. Every one of those 96 teams got thousands of tickets to give out to fans, sell to fans. They weren't going for $2,000. So
Right.
in the world of demand pricing, and if anyone's gone to a Broadway show anytime lately, they understand how, we've now sold, or I have a friend here in Hilton Head who does the pricing for Madison Square Garden. It's like, guess what? We're now in the semifinals, finals, and we're already at 90% filled capacity. What do you think we're going to sell our tickets for? Let's see how high is high. And of course, the
Right.
secondary market. So, yes, we see, 2,000 here, 50,000 here. But, in reality, I would, bet $1 that 80% of those tickets are at reasonable face value, whatever reasonable is, because it's coming through the system. It's like the Super Bowl.
Right.
Networks are getting tickets, sponsors are getting tickets, every team gets tickets. So by the time you
Right.
do that allocation, the actual
Public.
fan, the public, out of say a 70,000 seat stadium, maybe there's 15,000 tickets for them. So they don't always tell the story because it's the headline that everyone wants to bark at. But I'm not trying to defend FIFA ticket high prices, but
Right. No,
there's a
you're right.
lot that goes into it. Is all I'm trying to suggest.
People make decisions in life. People have priorities. People decide it's worth it, or they're like, no way am I doing that. And that's fine. So you said a word, and we said we would talk about it, and we're going a little long, but I mean, long is what? Right? Not long, longer than we talked about, but we've always done a 45-minute podcast. And we haven't talked about betting yet. You said I'd bet $1. But then you talked about a bet that you were going to make and didn't make, and you got a better night's sleep because of it. And I read a story about my year as a degenerate gambler in the Atlantic about a guy who was given $10,000 by the Atlantic. They said, look, be a gambler, a sports betting gambler, take all the kinds of bets they make. When you run out, you're done. And you write the story. If you make any money, we'll give you half. And then you write the story. And the story he wrote about making bets in the den when his wife is calling him in for dinner because he wanted to get 3 more bets down, and how incredibly impactful and negative the whole sports betting thing was, and the fact that it's currently out of control. I wanted you to talk about your story, and then I think we'll take some shots today. Shots on goal.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up then. Yeah, it was funny. I was on Coinbase, and I didn't realize that you can bet on sporting events, and it's not the traditional bet. It's some sort of formula of it's win or lose, and it's the percentages and what you may get for what you put in is based on the other participants. And I guess that's the case in many cases. Like in a horse race, it's like the odds keep changing based on the bets coming in at the window. So in my mind, I was like, if I was a betting man, I don't really bet on sports. Is that I think Turkey's going to win because the U.S. has to protect 4 players who have yellow cards. They don't want to get anyone injured. There's no incentive. They know they've won the group. They know where they're going more than likely, who they're going to play. So I have a feeling Turkey's going to win. Now, when I first saw on my phone this morning, coffee with my wife, I said, I started telling the story because I saw Turkey won 3-2. So I said, I should have bet. And then I read the story further to say, Turkey's goal was in the 96th or 97th minute, and it was like in the last minute of the game. So now I'm going, okay, now if you really put, let's say, money on it, and now you think you won. You think you won because what the situation was. All of a sudden you didn't win, right? So in the last minute, so it's a scary place to be. A lot of people do
You're
it.
up until 1 a.m. watching that outcome with your heart in your throat.
Yeah, and sports is, it's the person that puts in the, just watching the U.S. Open golf. Wyndham Clark, God bless him. I'm not particularly a big fan of his for what he did a year ago, and he had a tough crowd, Long Island crowd that was all over him. But man, the putt he made on, I think 17, the par three, which was off the green, not a lot, but it was probably a 25 foot putt. He makes a birdie, and he started that hole in the fescue. So I'm sure a lot of people who were betting on DraftKings and whatever were like against him, say, "Oh, he's in the fescue. It's a par five. He's got to punch out. Then he's got to go up, and then because one stroke less, he's in a playoff with Sam Burns, and he makes a birdie, and he makes a birdie. So
Right.
it's what makes sports, but not to preach to those that want to bet, because but you better be prepared for the roller coaster ride.
Well,
And I'm still
you've now tipped
concerned.
another.
No, I'm sorry. I did since I put my foot on. I'm still concerned of. We got to really just make sure the credibility of the sport stays. Above
It's hard.
approach.
Yeah. No, it's totally true. So I guess we can. I'll vent a second on the U.S. Open in Shinnecock Hills. You talk about living in Hilton Head. We're in Shinnecock. We're 1.4 miles away from the Shinnecock Country Club, whatever it's called, and a few $1 million away from being members, which is fine based on my handicap. But they said, we're not sure we're going to have it here anymore because the fans were so unruly. Now, the next U.S. Open in Shinnecock is in 2036, 10 years from now. It's at the back. Everybody who's in the rotation is getting a shot back in before Shinnecock. And I would say there would be a party from the residents of Shinnecock Hills that would be bigger than a U.S. Open final if they said the U.S. Open is never coming back to Shinnecock Hills. It was a disaster. And the fact that they were unruly, I think that's what's happened in sports in general. Fans are just over the top. They're just not respect. If you go back to the shirt and tie and hat fedora that men wore to baseball games, which I'm not saying that's right either, but the way they'll yell at players, Ryder Cup for Rory, U.S. Open for Wyndham, which was all about him playing against Scotty Scheffler, who's, everybody's favorite golfer, I suppose. Sure. Father's Day, 30 years old, career Grand Slam, blah, blah, blah. He'll get a career Grand Slam. There's a lot of negative stuff going on. And to your point, I hope sports survives it. I hope that the players who are coming out saying, I kind of threw that game down, or I missed a shot, or I didn't play, all to make money on betting. It's kind of frightening, because the only thing we ever had that was pure was sports. We knew, or we believed, that sports was pretty clean. I think golf might, I don't know. I was going to say golf might be the last one, but you could miss a putt if you wanted to miss a putt.
Oh, sure, because they bet on the individual golfer and whether they'll make putts or all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And you have the kid from, was it Scorby or whatever, from Cincinnati / Texas Tech, who's now screwed up. I'm sure there'll be an NFL team that will invite him to camp. But they're always going to have a little question, and maybe they won't. You sort of reap what you sow. I think that's the same.
Yep.
So let's wrap it up with what for both of us. I'll throw it to you. So put you on your heels a little bit. Now, we've done this for 2 years. What's one or two things that you learned from the podcast so far, or surprised you, or however you want to position it?
Okay, and then I'm going to ask you a different question.
Okay.
But I'll answer that one, because I'm going to put you on your heels, but not far back. So the one or two things I learned a lot from a lot of people, was approaches to careers, and the newer generation and how they see a career or not, or just a job, or, they say work-life balance. And these are the things that I've learned. I'll just try to make it quick. That work-life balance used to be your problem. If you had a work-life balance as a father or a mother or an executive who had parents who weren't well or a long commute, that is your problem. Deal with it. Now it's a corporate problem. It's moved from being your problem to it's our problem. So we'll have hybrid work, remote work, show up once or twice a week, personal time off. My son works for Spotify. God bless him. He gets like a mental wellness week off. Doesn't count against anything. Just go, Swedish company. Maybe we can learn from the Swedes. Yeah. But so that's one thing. Is like, wow, that is not the way I felt getting on the 6:20 train to Penn Station every morning and the 6:20 train back home or later. And I think that's probably the biggest one. I think the other one is, accepting that, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, which I've been saying for 20 years, that you don't know where you're going. And if you have a target that's 20 years out, you have almost no chance of you're hurting yourself aiming for a target. Just show up, be honest, integrity, look somebody in the eye, tell people, I don't know the answer to that, but I will get it. Don't make shit up, pardon me. And I think that's the other thing. You can answer that too if you want, but I wanted to ask you the question we've asked almost every guest. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Yeah, I think, be patient. I think I was a little impatient. I didn't do anything stupid that I regretted, but it's like you're 25 and you want things to move fast. You want to achieve, you want that career to start establishing itself. And you really you just said it, have to work hard. It will take care of itself. I mean, you just have to trust it. And young people watching and listening, you really have to trust that it will work out. And when it doesn't, you take things in your own hand. I'll tell a quick anecdote. When I was at BBDO, and I was still there, Ray had gone on to Benton and Bowles, a new media director came in. And he came to me and he said, hey, I've been told by the television salespeople that I should take care of you. You've been here 3 years. They think you have upside. I'm going to take care of you. I said, that's great. Because I was getting antsy at, again, probably 26 years old. And 6 months went by and nothing happened. So I get a call from William Esty, which was a small little agency that had Nissan and Colgate and a few other things, they only had 2 media buyers and a director. And, and I interviewed and they said, we want to hire you, but what will it take for you not to go back for a counter for BBDO? So I threw out the number, which was probably $30,000. And so I went back to this gentleman and said, I'm resigning. And he said, no, we've got to counter. You got to give us a chance to counter. I said, no, I gave you 6 months to counter, and you didn't do anything. So I am leaving. And when I tell you 15, 20 years later, if I ran into this person and another person, and then the names of both, it was still on their mind. And it's like, you can't, so what did I just connect there is, yes, be patient. But if you start to feel internally that your beat needs to go a little faster because you deserve it, other people will give you the beat, so don't get tied up. Because we both work for a man named Bob Levinson, who was the head of the department, not the one we're talking about, but not the one that I just referenced. And I went in when he was trying to, now at 24, having been at NBC Page, and said, I'm going to work here for 40 years. My father worked at RCA for 40 years. He got all the way to the top in HR and labor relationships. You got me for 40 years. And he said, shut up. And anyone who did Bob Levinson, he goes, you're going to work here for 3 years. think of it as getting your master's degree. You're going to go on to somewhere else. You're going to go 4 other jobs, and you're going to just be fine. But don't, this is not how this business works. And I actually had to convince my father, who was the 40-year guy, when I made that move, to say, "Where are you going? You only been at BBDO 3 years." I said, "Trust me, Dad, this is how it works." And then the odd thing, not to go down Tony's bio, is 9 months later. So sorry, William Esty, is McCann Erickson called me, a gentleman by the name of Bill Crosdale, and said an agency called Backer Spielvogel just started, and they took all the Coca-Cola people to do the Miller business because Miller Miller Brewing was the company they took. I want to hire you at 27 to be the national TV buyer for Coca-Cola. And it wasn't even an interview. It was like, I didn't even know the guy, but it shows you the other theme, and then I'll shut up, is I always tell young people, just know you're always interviewing. It's not formal. You're always being observed, and you always have a reputation. So a man I never knew who ran the media department or the national TV department at McCann Erickson with the likes of Coca-Cola calls me up and says, "Come over at 6 o'clock. I want to offer you this job," because of the reputation you had built at other places, and you had similar situations, I know. So I think I answered your question, which is be patient, let it beat, but in the same breath, if you feel like you're not being recognized for what you're doing or taken for granted, then take things in your own hands. So it's sort of a two-themed directive.
So I'm going to put a button on that, and then we'll do our gracious goodbye. You're always interviewing, and from your buddy Ray, you're always selling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's Brian Roberts, if it's Jamie Dimon, if it's Elon Musk, if it's a buyer who's buying or a seller who's selling. You're always interviewing and you're always selling. Some people have some disdain for salespeople or the fact that they are selling, and it's unfortunate because they are. Every time you show up, you're selling yourself.
Let me add one thing, Ray, just because I'll step on the is for people. There's a lot of people we know. They get to a certain age, they sort of get aged out, but you don't have to be aged out. And what I want to say here is, you could have a 30-year-old that acts like a 70-year-old, and you could have a 70-year-old that acts like a 30-year-old. It's your mentality. It's how you act. Always work in the today. People, if you're older, people don't want to hear always how you did it. Advise in the today. Don't talk about age. Don't talk about, how long you work. They get it. They can see you. They have a mirror. But working today, because it's not about the age. It's about how your attitude is. I believe this so firmly. And I just want to echo that as sort of my parting direction to the sort of the older group in the crowd. Stay relevant, stay today, and that's a big key.
That will be the final word. You should have it anyway. So it's been fun. Good luck. We will stay in touch, obviously. And, we'll see you down the road.
You got it. Now, good luck with you and Ramon.
Thank you.
Ramos. And, maybe I will watch and see. I'll probably be jealous at times. But, maybe before the year's out, a little holiday cheer will come on and reminisce and share stories.
See how you're doing.
Good luck. And as you say, in a personal standpoint, we'll stay in touch. So it's not like we're both going, into a cave. But
right.
But those, and thank you to those. Listen, hopefully those who've been regulars, we're glad we figure if you've been regulars, you have enjoyed it. So thank you for that. We do take it serious. And for new ones, even for this episode, and get inspired, enjoy it going forward, because it is It is unfiltered. There's really no preparation. It's spontaneous. It's organic, and it's sincere. And that's what you want in life, both personally and in business. So that's what we tried to do, and I'm proud that I think we delivered it. So,
Agreed.
travels on.
Onward.